Chapter 6. The Anti-Fun Police. My 3-year prison sentence. I believe right now people in their 20s are facing a struggle. If you follow our society's ideal, it looks a little something like this. After high school, you go to university or college. By 22, you have a degree. After university, you work, and then you gotta love the work that you're doing. You work hard for 7 years, you make money, you find a partner, you buy a house, you get married. By 30, you start a family, and then you continue to work and love the job until the day you die. And at one point, this sounded really good to me, and then I realized it wasn't the path I was meant to take. I was never really an academic. I was always like a B student. I even failed a class in university and had to be on academic probation. It took me 5 years to graduate. I have a major in psychology and a minor in general business, but I basically paid $30,000 for a piece of paper that said, "Good for you. You're competent enough to sit for 5 years now. Pay back your loan." When I graduated in 2013, I was 23 years old and I had an undergrad degree and 5 years of sales experience under my belt. I learned far more in those 5 summers selling than I did in school, and it was a paid internship on how to run a business and interact with people. However, my professional life started to stagnate once I left school. My district manager moved on from the company, we no longer had a leader, and my friends in the business either graduated, moved on, or quit their job. All my work friends were leaving. I thought it was normal, so I decided to follow the trend and quit too. I had some time to travel, so I decided to visit San Francisco and Los Angeles with my girlfriend. Esports was growing, and I was such a big gamer in university, and one of my favorite online games was League of Legends. I watched Season 3 World Championships in California, and my friends Lance tagged along. It was one of the best nerd trips I've ever done. Lance and I swore that wherever Season 4 World Championships were, we're going to go there no matter what. Not long after, it was announced that it was going to be held in South Korea. When I returned home from Cali, however, reality set in. I was going to have to get a real job. An old sales colleague was working at a well-known investment firm and told me that I should go apply. If I got the job, he would get $500. It's a win for the both of us, so I burned through majority of my financial resource and the empty light was on. So I went through the online application process, used my friend's name as a referral, and I received a call for an interview very soon after. I had been in the highest level of sales and development before I left my knife selling job. I ran 2 offices in Western Canada and I recruited and trained my own staff. Because I could talk about anything and everything that involved sales, I was sure when I went for this interview, I would get the job. The investment team had 2 partners, which meant I had to be interviewed twice. The first interview went so well that I got a hug by the end of it. And for the second one, they gave me a task, which was to research a topic and present it. And that was literally my job as a sales rep. Sit down with the customer, present the product, handle objection, and then close. Easy. Because of that, I nailed the task. It was a happy new year for me at the start of 2013 when I began the onboarding process. Keen to learn about money, it was lots of fun learning something new and at a high level. I was given the role of the marketing guy with the team, and that entailed working on presentations for my advisors, making follow-up phone calls to clients, and pushing paper here and there. I got to stock the desk in my cubicle with all the free notebooks and planners and pens I could fit in, and I even added some photos to personalize it. I was living the classic corporate life, attending business networking meetings, lunch and learns, charity galas. For the first 6 months, I loved it. And then something changed. My shift was from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday to Friday. The late start meant I could sleep in a little, yet because I was in a cubicle all day, it was dark when I left at night, especially during winter. My cubicle was in the far back corner where my advisors couldn't really notice me if I was there or not, so over time I just started to come in 15 minutes late and leave 15 minutes early. Why? Well, because the job was not fulfilling and there was no goal for me to pursue. I would just sit there and just try to get motivated and just making the dumbest goals I could think of. On one occasion, I set out to finish 2 PowerPoint presentations and I rewarded myself with a cup of coffee. But I could just get one of those cups anytime because it was free in the staff kitchen. Another time I showed my advisor why we needed better mice for the computers, and she ended up buying 2, one for her and one for me. So I realized that going from a job with freedom to a job with stability, I was just wasting time on dumb shit. If you love your job, or at least you're growing, learning, and you're getting paid well, just keep doing it, because I didn't love my job and I wasn't getting any of those things. It definitely wasn't that I didn't want to work. I was in sales. I chose to do 80-hour weeks when I was motivated. No one told me what I could and couldn't do, so if I wanted to do nothing, I did just that. And I knew the consequences of slopping off were, well, my business would suffer and I would fail. In the corporate world, though, everything was routine. I worked my 40 hours a week from 10 to 6, Monday to Friday. I take my 15-minute break at noon. I'll do my lunch at 2, and another break near the end of the day. It was just an awful pattern, and I knew exactly what I was going to do every single day. There was no variety and no opportunities for spontaneity. It was just incredibly boring. The worst part for me was I knew exactly how much money I was going to make. It didn't matter how hard or how little I worked, the paycheck was always the same. And something I took away from this experience was this: if you slack, you feared being fired, which means you put pressure on yourself. You stress even more, and then you become less confident in your abilities. So, how can you help your employer grow their business when you're just trying to survive? Though you worked really hard, you might get a bonus at the end of the year, but is it worth the late nights and the overtime that you didn't want to claim because you felt bad because you didn't finish the 100 hours of work in 40 hours? Oh wait, it should be 35 hours because you have to take your lunch break. And although if you're like my friends in the corporate workforce, you work through your lunch because you need to get XYZ done and you don't really have time to eat because you're so busy. With this mindset, I just stopped caring about my job. Now, don't get me wrong, when there was work to be done, I did it to the best of my ability. I take pride in the work, even if it's mundane, but I wanted to have some fun too. However, I just wasn't happy at my job, and that didn't mean I burned any bridges. I take the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know, very seriously. Therefore, to find fun, I did what I do best. I just engage people. I love connecting with people, and I genuinely care about what they have to say. And I found that if you ask specific, high quality, and engaging questions, most people are likely to help you out or just open up to you. Even if they might not get anything out of it, think of it this way. If you had a friend or a cousin or a niece or a nephew ask you a good question, would you answer them or just look at them in like a funny way and walk away? So when someone asks you a high quality or specific question, it just makes you feel special because you're top of mind for them. And when you're top of mind to somebody, you're probably more willing to answer their question, and plain and simple. Some of my colleagues at the investment firm were brilliant, and I just needed to take advantage of that. I spoke with everyone and anyone in that office whom I thought I could add value to. I particularly went for people who never got appreciation even though they deserved it. It was usually the receptionists and not the millionaire advisors. Well, why? Well, I saw them literally every day. They transferred calls, they ordered office supplies, they kept the kitchen in order, and many other small tasks, in my opinion, were some of the most important things to get done in the office, especially when it's organizing the staff lunches because I love eating. Becoming friends with the front end staff meant my days started brightly. I was always greeted with a smile and a conversation as I headed into the office, and if I wanted to order a specific office supply, I got that friendship priority and it was ordered right away. And when it came to the food for the office, my favorite foods would magically appear in the kitchen. Being able to talk to anyone and pick brains was the best thing I could have done for myself during these circumstances. Since I was in the banking world, I just wanted to learn how to make money work for myself. And I went around asking questions. The advisors and the assistants talked to me about topics about property investment and stocks and the market. The assistants, meanwhile, taught me how to use different programs and resolve common issues. I was starting to have fun at my job, and I just wasn't ready to give up just yet. There was still lots to learn from the people around me, plus they didn't really give me a reason to quit. That is until they decided to not let me go to Korea. When I was hired, I mentioned that I was going to go to Asia in October, and then we verbally agreed that I'd be able to go. I had my flights and my hotels and my tickets purchased because it was just an experience I wasn't going to miss. I believe that they given me their permission. I was wrong about that. Wilson, we need you to stay here at the office on these dates. My boss told me 2 weeks before my trip. We have a big client event happening and we need you. I'm taking my vacation in Asia those days. Like, I won't be here. Like, are you telling me not to go on this trip? Wilson, I can't have you leave during the client event, but you can go after. I just couldn't describe how upset I was. Like, my face was stoic and my body language was neutral, but I was just so fuming. And then I went back to my desk and I committed to this ultimatum. Do I work or do I leave? I googled how to write A letter of resignation. I copied the template, wrote all the details, and stuffed my letter into an envelope. I didn't hand it in immediately. I just knew I needed a little bit of time to reflect. So I went home. I was still mad and restless, but I told my girlfriend what happened and I talked with my mom, and they asked me the same thing, like, what are you going to do? Quit. Final answer. So what are you going to do after that? Like when you're back from the trip? And I just said, I'll figure it out. So neither my mom or my girlfriend tried to convince me to stay at the job because they knew I was unhappy, but I could just make a decision for myself. And besides, I told them I'd figure it out, and I always did. Deciding to quit caused something crazy to happen. I was happy. I felt relief, I was calm, and a sense of confidence. I felt like I regained a sense of control over my life. I wasn't somebody else's peon or workhorse. I was in total control of my life again. But it wasn't over just yet. I still needed to hand in my letter of resignation to HR the next day. On the day I decided to quit, I went in early, walked downstairs to Human Resource, put my letter in the mailbox, and I went back to my desk and started to clean it out. Halfway through doing that, my telephone rang, and it was the head of HR, and she told me to come downstairs to her office. When I got there, she asked me a ton of questions, but in the end, she couldn't convince me to reconsider. I went back to my desk and finished packing everything into a box. It was like a scene out of a movie. At some point, I got a call from my advisor. She didn't even want to see me, and I didn't want to waste her time, so we had a quick exchange of words. I hung up, I said my goodbyes around the office, I left, and I was free. Although that job wasn't for me, I'm very grateful for that experience. It helped me figure out what I like about the job and what I don't. I also enjoyed learning about investment and how to grow my money. So, most importantly, though, I learned that finding ways to take advantage of my circumstances and my environment, I could make it fun. Going to Korea was one of the most influential experiences of my life. The World Championship was only one day, but the 2 weeks that I was there, I created some of the best memories, and it was a beginning of a journey of figuring out who I was and what I wanted to become. Something I could have never gotten if I was just sitting at a cubicle stuck to a schedule. Quitting my job and traveling was truly great, but when I came back from my vacation, reality set in again. I just needed to find another job, a job. I had money in the bank, so I could afford to take my sweet time finding work, but in the meantime, I tried to have as much fun as possible. I hung with a girlfriend, I played video games, I worked on my health, began powerlifting, I dabbled in parkour. I also touched on my creative side, and I started making music and practicing drumming and refining my guitar techniques. I tried numerous things that did not bring home the bacon, but I loved it all. A few months later, my friend Will asked me if I wanted to go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Will is one of the most interesting people I know. He's extremely intelligent and business savvy. In school, he started a ramen shop, and later he worked at an insurance company while running a battery business on the side. And did I mention that he can speak 4 languages and is the vice president of the Fukinese Association in Edmonton? Yet, he's still extremely humble and quiet. CES is a 4-day trade show where you can see the newest technology before it hits the store shelves. When Will asked me if I wanted to check it out, I knew he was planning on doing big things. As you can already tell about this chapter, when I see an opportunity, I'll take it. So I got my tickets, booked my flight, and we were off. As it turned out, that trip to Vegas was awful. I got sick and I developed a ton of blisters on my hands and my feet, and the smell of strong perfume and cigarettes gave me headaches and nausea. To top it off, one of the quietest people I know snored in his sleep. At first, I made fun of the fact that his snoring was louder than his voice, but it stopped being funny when I realized that he was getting perfect sleeps every night while I was getting yelled at by his nose. Even though the trip bombed on a personal level, it was one of the most significant trips I've done. Having 5 days with my friends gave me a lot of time to share stories, and near the end of the trip, I mentioned to Will that I needed to find a job, and he said he would check around for me when he got back. 2 weeks after we returned, Will texted me to check my email. I received a referral link to the insurance company he worked for. The application process was the same as the bank. I attached my resume, my cover letter, answered the questionnaire, and sent everything off. A few days later, I got a call in for an interview. This time, I didn't get a hug at the end of the interview, but I was hired on the spot. I can't say that I was very excited about this new chapter in my employment history, but I thought it would be fun to learn about insurance and it would allow me to be useful. I knew I would gain some good knowledge and skill, but I could work with a good friend. And also, having been in two car accidents in my life, I thought it would be great to know how to deal with them if I were ever to have another one. Speaking about those two accidents, the first one was because my dumbass didn't clean the frost off the windshield, and I was gonna be late for class. So I was trying to do this duck and drive while the windows defrosted. Everyone does this in cold weather. So I ended up hugging the right side of the residential road too much, and I crashed into a snowbank. I was lucky that I didn't hit a person or another car, but the right passenger side bumper was smashed, and I broke the windshield wiper fluid container. I just remember looking at it and thought, and it was like, ugh, I'm an idiot. I was gonna be late for class anyways. My parents weren't happy with the incident, but we ended up getting cheap aftermarket parts and we fixed it. My second accident was when I was working at the bank during a statutory holiday. I wanted some extra time and a half pay. I parked in the parkade and I went up to work. Once the workday was over, I started to approach my car, and a security guard approached me and told me that there was an accident that involved my vehicle. From where I was standing, there was no damage, but when I got closer and I walked to my driver's side door, it was completely crunched in. Gathered all the information and just went on with my day. So, with any new job, the honeymoon phase at the insurance company was the best. I got 6 weeks of paid training, and I learned a ton about vehicle, home, and commercial insurance. When training was over, I was a full-fledged insurance auto adjuster, which meant that when someone went into an accident, they would call me. I would set up a tow truck and a rental and tell them whether they were at fault or not. It was a lot of fun than the corporate banking, but the company treated everyone really well. We had free lunches a few times a month, and we had ping pong tables in the lunchroom. And the best part about it was I was surrounded by good people, or so it seemed. It wasn't long before I started to hate my job again. This time it wasn't boredom, but the work environment. Everyone was miserable. They would just bitch and complain about everything, and I hated that. They were so negative, and I just started to believe that this was going to be my life. Like, woe is me, my life is hard, and everyone was out to get me. But I couldn't really blame them. The workload was really heavy, and the amount of claims we had to take in a day was ridiculous. This was the first job that caused me stress from having too much work. And on top of simple motor vehicle accidents, we had to deal with complicated claims like arson and stolen vehicles. I was handling over 300 claims at a time, and every one of those claimants wanted me to deal with their shit first. What followed after wasn't my proudest moments in life, but I went from being the most positive and most uplifting person to having anger issues. I struggled every day to be happy and not to break something, but various times I would smash my keyboard and I broke my desk and I punched my computer monitor like clean right in the face. And I had to talk to my manager about that one. I had these hissy fits in the men's washroom, fighting the paper towel dispenser, and one time I smashed the elevator button and it made such a loud banging sound that my claims manager came out of her office and just to check what happened, and I just said, "No, nothing." I wasn't in a good headspace at work, and when I got home, I just wouldn't say hi to anyone in the house. I just went straight from upstairs straight to my room to play video games. I just needed that escapism to deal with the next day. I barely talked to the girlfriend because there was nothing to talk about other than how shitty my day was. Then a friend of mine, JT, he never gave up on the sales gig, and he came to visit me in Edmonton. He went from being a branch manager to a district manager in one of the largest cities our company, and he was earning over six figures. We went out for lunch together with another mutual friend, and we spent hours talking and catching up. And when he asked me about my job, I just told him the truth. It sucked. He asked me how much I was making, and I had no shame. I told him. And him being the nicest asshole I know, JT told me what I needed to hear. He told me that he paid more in taxes than I made that year. And that fucking hurt. So when your close friend shits on you like that, you can either attempt to salvage what's left of your pride and ego and call him you're a fucking dick and disowning him as a friend, or you can just accept what they say as the truth. And that's what I did. JT said something that changed everything. Come on, Wilson. You're better than that. Just come back to sales, quit your job, move to my city, and sell at my office. Those words changed my attitude towards my insurance job. I couldn't say yes to JT at the time. I stuck with the insurance job through Christmas and went to the Christmas party and drank and enjoyed myself. Now, at that point, JT has been talking about his company trip to St. Kitts in the Caribbean. I had no idea where that was, but he asked me if I wanted to go. Now, I've been on sales trips before and I knew how much fun they were, but nonetheless, I just said no. JT kept pushing. He told me that he made a bet with his division manager and that he could get me back to selling. That's when he dropped the bomb. He would pay for me to go. Come, hang out, relax, talk with our national sales manager, and I was like, okay, I couldn't refuse. If this was him bribing me back to come back, so be it. I said yes, made my vacation arrangements, and that was it. That trip was everything I expected. I hung out in the sun and spent time with the top selling managers from all over Canada. I was surrounded by positivity and encouragement. It was amazing. Like JT, the national and division managers believed that I would make an impact. They knew my history and told me that if I came back, there would be a lot of support for me. I've always wanted to have amazing people truly believe in me. Having the ability to trust someone's judgment of me, even though I didn't believe in myself, made me a better person. There was a difference between mom and dad telling me that they believed in me and a friend putting his money where his mouth is and taking me across the world just to show me that he does. I needed to quit my job and work for myself, but not by myself. I needed to go back to the sales company where I had excelled, where I would be among people who would celebrate my highs and support me through my lows. That was the environment that I thrived in. I went back to work feeling refreshed and reinvigorated. 2 weeks later, I was just back in that low mode with the threat of being fired because of the lack of my speed and my anger. I had a performance review that week where I met up with my units manager. We began our meeting with small talk about how my trip was. Then she took out my insurance stat and just started talking about where we can improve and blah, 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 blah. I understood everything, but it went in one ear and out the other. And then something inside of me snapped. I just remember turning to my unit manager and just stopping her mid-sentence and just saying, I think I'm done. Sorry? I think I'm done. What do you mean you're done? Well, I don't want to work here anymore. Just, you know what? Consider this my 2 weeks notice. And then I smiled. I did it again. I quit my job. Only this time I did it mid-sentence and with a letter. My parents were used to me quitting, so my talk with them was pretty easy. I told them that I was going to move away and go back to sales. They didn't bat an eye. They knew I was trying to find myself as a person, and they let me do whatever I wanted. Telling my girlfriend that I had to move away was a little bit more difficult. I told her how unhappy I was with the insurance job and that I needed to quit. I know she didn't want me to go again, and she started to cry. I explained to her that the longer I stayed in an unhappy place, the worse I would become. I just needed to leave for my own sake. I promised that I would come visit when I got the chance, and I'll call her every day. I don't know how many times I had to say sorry, but I needed to be selfish and take a chance on myself. I'd just been so unhappy for the past 2 years, and I just needed to do it. 2 weeks later, I moved 3 hours south from Edmonton to Calgary. I roomed with JT and started selling again. I got off to a slow start, but it was like riding a bike. By the end of the year, I was the number 3 sales rep in Canada, and I figured that it wasn't too bad for a 3-year hiatus. I finally broke out of my prison. I'd given the corporate world 3 years of my life, and I just didn't want to give it anymore. I promised myself I would never go back. It stifled my creativity, it ruined my ability to set goals and dream big, and it just made me so angry and self-loathing and negative. Never again. My saving grace was the belief that others had in me. So please, 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 if you truly believe in someone, show them, because you might change their life for the better. Chapter 6 Summaries. The honeymoon phase is just that. It's a honey phase. Once it's over, you're going to need to figure out what you're really about. Now, treat the job that you hate as a paid internship just to learn more about yourself. Fighting the paper dispenser or the elevator does not get you a raise at work. Now, give your chance to see if you like the job or not. You can always quit on the spot. And last but not least, prioritize your own happiness, or else you'll just drag everyone around you down. Don't be that person.